Hi, my name is Karine and in this video I'll explain how I created this website. The focus of this video will be on Greensock, which I used for all the 2D animations, and on A-Frame, which I used to create a 3D scene. Okay, so these are the files I created. They're linked down below if you want to download them. I'll start with the 2D Greensock page. For the 2D page, I treated the HTML like always. I wanted to use an SVG image I created in Illustrator, but you can use the usual elements and style them with CSS. To make the animating possible, I placed a script you can find right here on the Greensock website in the bottom of the body. Now we open JavaScript. To create a tween like the sun rotating, you have to start by noting whether you use tween light or tween max. Just to give you a little bit of a background, there are 4 Greensock tools you can choose from. Tween light are the basics used for simple animations like only a color change or only moving from left to right and stopping, or change in scale. Timeline light makes it possible to sequence multiple tweens and make them pause, restart, slow down and things like that. Timeline max has everything timeline light has, but also has functionalities like repeat and callbacks to previous tweens. It also makes it possible to sequence multiple timelines. And last but not least, Tween Max. Tween Max is everything all previous named tools have, plus the functionality of staggering tweens, repeat individual tweens, and much more. You enter if you want the animation to start from or go to the CSS values you give right here. In this case I used rotating. I also added repeat -1, which makes the animation repeat forever, a transform origin, which makes the rotation happen from the center, and an ease to keep the animation speed consistent. Here you enter the class or ID of the HTML element you'd like to animate, and here you add the duration of the animation. If you want to use multiple tweens in a row, like I did for the flickering stars, you want to use a timeline light or timeline max. To create a timeline, you first have to name it and make it a variable like so. You can give it any name you want. Animating a timeline is much like animating an individual tween, but instead of saying tween max or light, you enter the name you gave the timeline variable. You can then add all the tweens you want in a row without having to name the timeline again. The tweens will automatically begin when the previous one is over, but if you wanted to wait a little before beginning, or start before the previous one has ended, you can fill in the amount of seconds here. To close the timeline, you simply add a semicolon after the last tween in the timeline. To create an interactive animation that starts when you click on an element, you have to add a function. Here you fill in the class or ID of the element that has to be clicked on, and within the function you add a timeline or individual tween as you'd otherwise write it. This timeline right here begins with a set tween, which means that every time this timeline starts, the scale, opacity and location are reset. Now head over to the 3D castle. I created this using A-Frame. To add A-Frame, you have to copy this line from the A-Frame website and add it in the head of your HTML. I also added some more scripts, reasons for which I wrote above them. To create the 3D surroundings, you start by adding A-scene tags. In between these tags, the world will be built. To create a simple box, of which I used many to create the walls, I added as a primitive with an A-box tag. A primitive is a basic 3D shape, like a sphere, a box or a cone. If you want to see what primitives exist, when I started using A-Frame, I tried out almost every primitive in this pen. You can find a link to it in the description. I'll use the box as an example. By default, the box will be a cube, 1 by 1 by 1, in the center of your scene. Here I changed the color, width, height, depth, position, and added a static body, which is not mandatory, but it makes my camera unable to move through. Now I want to show you a very easy and quick way to add an interactive element. First I created the camera setup. I wrote a full blog post on this topic, but for now you can just copy what I have here. Within the camera, I created a cursor tag. This cursor is a little loop in the center of the screen. I added 2 event sets to it that make the color of the cursor change when hovering over an object with link as class, which this plane, for instance, has. This is a plane I use as a hidden door, and like the cursor, I also gave this an event set. This event set makes the door position change to one where it cannot be seen when the cursor is touching the object and the mouse is down. You can also add more things, like it also changing color when the cursor hovers over it by copying the event sets of the cursor. There are many more ways to create interactive elements. I also used many in the castle scene, but I think this is a pretty great place to start. I highly encourage you to go experiment with both A-Frame and Greensock, and for all the resources I used to learn about it, don't forget to check out my blog. Bye!